Hi everyone. For those of you who have been following me for the past few months, by the way, thank you so much for your support. You're the reason why I wanted to post these videos and share English learning tips and strategies. And thank you for all the time you have spent watching my videos. So if you have known me from the very beginning, you know that a couple of months before I started posting videos on social media, I quit my job here at a local university. So today I want to go back a little bit to it now that we're about 6 months after. And I do want to talk a little bit more about what I went through in the process. Hopefully anyone who came across this video, either you're currently in a similar experience or you have been through something like this, or maybe nothing like this has happened in your life, and I hope they don't. But I hope that there is something here in the video that is for everybody. So back in June 2023, I quit working at a local university here in Nova Scotia, where I had been working for a little over 7 months at that point. Now, I did not include too much detail in my previous video about my experience, mostly for privacy reasons, and also those details didn't matter. I simply needed a place to share the experience and to put a closure on it and to move on. But there were a few things that I didn't include in my previous videos. I wasn't very specific about how I was feeling right afterwards. I felt very lost. I was unsure about where I was going. I had literally no idea about my future. And right about then, the feelings of uncertainty and desperation came rushing back because I experienced those exact same feelings 3 years prior when I was about to look for jobs, first time in years in this foreign country, where my area of expertise basically meant nothing because everyone speaks English here. So 3 years later, these feelings surfaced again, and it was very, very hard on my head. And it took me some time afterwards to realize that I was kind of traumatized in a sense from the experience because I was experiencing quite a bit of depression during that time as well. Even though I knew I handled everything the best I could, and there was no better way to conclude that experience, the whole thing still made me question myself. If I had made the right decision, if I should have just stuck it out a little bit longer, or if it was me who was simply unable to hold a job. So weeks after that, I was simply in a constantly anxious and restless state. I couldn't find the motivation to get up in the morning. I found it really hard to move on, and I wasn't sure where to move on from there. So day after day, I couldn't find the interest in anything. Everything seemed kind of pointless at the moment, and I became kind of irrational towards job hunting. These are the things I didn't get to talk about in my previous videos, mostly because I wasn't quite sure how I was feeling. The initial adrenaline hasn't worn off at that point. It's almost like I was still in the process of falling, and then I all of a sudden realized that, hey, I was hitting the ground, and I hit it pretty hard. So it's kind of like the after effect of the experience. But that's not all of it for my video today. So a month and a half later, I had this idea of posting videos on social media platform to share what I did to learn English and my English teaching experience. So after the first few videos, my channel started to gain some traction, and here I am. I remembered when I first started the channel, I did not have a plan, and I had nothing to lose. I remember thinking to myself, if this didn't work out, I would simply move on. And I have been grateful of that decision ever since. And now that 6 months have passed, and I'm confident to say that I have somewhat gained a fresh perspective on this whole thing. And I would choose to believe that every experience in our life helps enlighten us in some way. Perhaps by making us stronger, smarter, kinder, or wiser. And this experience of mine was no exception. I had a few things that stuck with me after a lot of frustration, reflections, and the slow and painful moving on. I was forced to question my previous way of life. Things like my spending habits, my constant stress, fear of insecurity and loss of control, my desire to have control over everything. Prior to this June, that was the only way of life known to me, which then I realized wasn't necessarily right. And history has certainly proved that. It also makes me wonder why I work. To a large extent, I was working to make money so that I can buy things to help cope with my anxiety. You know, the stress and anxiety I got to experience every day at work. The whole thing just seems a bit backwards to me now. And money seemed like the wrong remedy for my then unwell emotional state. I feel more comfortable with looking at work as a way to afford a comfortable lifestyle for me and my family so that we are able to afford things that we need and not stress out about our daily expenses. But there's a thin line between need and want. I was able in the past to trick myself into believing that I needed more things, but really, I didn't need them at all. And I did come to realize that the desire for materialistic things did come from my decade-old insecurities. I thought that those things made me happy, but in reality, they just became more of a burden to myself. And they actually made life quite unbearable for me. So my take on work, or career for that matter, is this. I think my work is only to add some meanings to my life. Every profession has its ups and downs. But at the end of the day, I need to feel that I'm doing something meaningful. I'm actually in some way helping people and perhaps even making a small difference in their lives. But that's not to say that I need to feel important. Quite to the contrary, I don't want to feel important because that's not the point. Like almost everyone else, I just want to spend my day with what gives me joy and those I love.